Hello, this is Bolt Gunmetal, and if you're hearing a buzzing sound that's driving you crazy, that would be the air conditioning that I need on because how hot it is this summer and because I'm working in an attic that frankly gets very hot. So I'm going to need that on. I'll just talk a little louder. Today's topic is not like any of the other ones I've done recently, and it's going to be kind of leaning towards a series which is recruiting people into Warhammer 40k or into miniature wargaming in general. I call it recruiting because it takes quite a process to get somebody to commit to playing the game, to actually buy models, build them, maybe paint them, I don't know if they will or won't, and then play a game with them. That is unlikely without, some kind of push from a group or a friend who's already into the hobby. So, having said that, I'm going to start with the number one reason why recruiting for this hobby is so damn hard. I'm just going to show a pretty image while I say it. Warhammer is just way too goddamn expensive. Miniature wargaming isn't always too expensive, but Warhammer is. Look at this battlefield. If somebody wants something like this took 10 years of buying a little tiny bit every month until eventually I had sizable collections that I could be proud of. When you show somebody something like this, they're like, oh, I want this too. And you're like, well, in 10 years you can have it. It's not really a good sales point. How would you tell somebody to get their own terrain table? Mine's made out of plastic, so maybe if they wanted that too, those have gotten very expensive. So get your own terrain table, fill it out with tons and tons and tons of buildings and plants and stuff. Then don't forget several armies that you might want to play the game with. And it's like you can see where this just starts to become so expensive. And I am committed to this game. I've liked it since I was a kid, and I'm going to stick with it. And in that way, I guess I'm kind of a fanatic because I just really like the products and can't stop buying them in a sense because I just like them. I have a hard time selling anybody on it. Like, I worked at a game store, and you know what? I'll pause here and go back to the other perspective. All right, I worked at a game store. It's actually in Maryland. I'm not going to say the name of it, but it wasn't a Games Workshop, but we sold Games Workshop products. When I got hired, I told them, I know a lot about Star Wars miniatures games. I've played every one that's come out. I've stayed on the forefront of those. And then I'm always into Warhammer and Warhammer 40k. So they were like, cool. I was like, sweet. I want, while I'm doing sales, I really want to kind of be in the Warhammer or the Star Wars section so I can sell what I'm best at. And most of the time I would get a chance to do so, which was great. So I found the easiest thing in the world was if somebody came in there and was already into Warhammer 40k, you either leave them alone and they'll buy stuff on their own, or you talk to them about their armies. If you know a little thing or two, they're building, a Chaos Demon army, and you ask, is it going to be Nurgle? Is it going to be Tzeentch? Is it going to be Khorne? And they're like, yeah, it's going to be Khorne. I'm doing all these, I'm going to have Chaos Space Marines with them, and I'm building this soupy list. And you're like, oh, have you picked up Abaddon? Have you, you start asking little questions, and then usually they'll buy more stuff. I'm not trying to tell people how to sell stuff. That doesn't matter. But in a sense, it does. What I'm trying to tell you is selling Warhammer to somebody who knows everything about Warhammer isn't even a process. They've already been recruited. They're already into the hobby. It's very easy to get them to buy more. It's the person who hasn't bought anything, who barely knows of what wargaming is. In layman's terms, it's somebody who knows fucking nothing about this hobby. How do you get them to want to build a 10-year plan of building a whole world and several armies and all this stuff? If you're not rich, and honestly, here's the thing, is like, with me, I've realized it's not even always a money thing, and I'll get into that later, but like, building out everything that you want in Warhammer 40k takes money, and it takes time. If I wanted to build, like, say I wanted to buy 10 armies that are 2,000 points, and I had the money to do it, I certainly don't have the time to build, over 1,000 models. It would be years before I was done with all of them. And so because of that, it does kind of have an issue of time and money. You're trying to get somebody into Warhammer, and they need to have expendable income for it and the time to actually put into the hobby, to get into it, to learn the rules, play the game, get a group, hang out with the group. You're asking for an investment of time and money. Jesus, you're asking them to do a job. If they don't know what this is, you're asking a lot of somebody who doesn't really care. Selling them on the aesthetic is the number one thing that I would do. I would discover as a salesman what you are into. What are you here looking at in general? Well, we play D&D. Oh, you play D&D. Like, what kind of character do you play? And they might say, I'm a dwarf. And I'll say, in Warhammer and Warhammer 40k, you can play as dwarf armies, and you can have dwarf characters. You could easily implement your D&D character into your list and name him and have him fighting in an army. This is building an army to represent you with characters versus just a single character. It's actually an expansion of the lore that you've probably already done. You can go further with it using the Warhammer worlds, and you can just keep going. And it's like somebody says, oh, I really like Alien and Predator and stuff. You show them Tyranids. Like, check out these guys. One second. Figuring out what somebody's into in the hobby is the best way to get them into that actual hobby. So for instance, like if they're at a game store and, sorry, my nose itches, and they're there for Magic the Gathering, they might have an interest in Age of Sigmar over 40k because it's the mythical stuff. It has kind of the same aesthetic in some ways. You might get them interested in Age of Sigmar and tell them, it's a tabletop game where you can really get into the hobby. You might want to sell them on different aspects. If it's an artist, if it's somebody who likes arts and crafts, how about, that you have a 12-year-old kid who likes doing puzzles. You can explain the aspect of puzzle building that comes with miniatures. And it's like, so you want to find the right thing. One second. Sorry, I think I'm a little sick and slowing me down. Anyway, you want to find the right thing to push that person, to push what they would be interested in. I have a friend who really likes overpowered stuff. If he was in a video game, if he could play as Godzilla while everybody else played as an ant, that's the game he would want to play. He loves to be the OP, overpowered Goku Superman character. There is so much stuff within Warhammer to just be like, this sword literally tears through the reality. Like, it tears through reality. It breaks the rules of reality when it's swung. This sword sucks the souls out of its enemies. This Space Marine held off 10,000 Tyranids himself. There's a lot of this badass stuff. Sorry, I'm just feeling itchy and just off. There's a lot of this badass stuff that makes it easier to sell the product. When they have so many factions and so many things to pick from, you just have to figure out what in those 20 to 30 factions, if you include Age of Sigmar and stuff like that, what matches this person that they might be motivated enough to build their miniatures, come up with a lore maybe, paint them even, and then go play some games. And often you have to find simply, you don't want to sell them an army that they don't want. You're trying to sell them something that makes them want, they leave the store excited to get home and tear the package open and build that. If they don't feel that way, you don't want somebody to start the hobby because it's just going to be, they're going to end up with a negative feeling about it because they may never have done it. For instance, here I am selling this stuff. I can't get my own dad to play Warhammer with me, and he likes D&D and stuff. He just has no interest in 40k. And so he eventually agreed to play the game. I told him about, there are good guys. It's called the Tau. They're good enough. They fight for the greater good. He bought the codex, he bought the box, he built 5 models and then gave up. And then a year later, I got the models and gave them to a friend who played Tau. It was upsetting because it was I couldn't even get my own dad into this game. So I've been a salesman of this game and I couldn't sell it to my own father who's into very similar stuff. So I was like, crap, this game is hard to sell. And, he would look at the codex, and he makes far more money than I do, and he would be like, good lord, $60 for this fucking book? And it's he buys comic books, he buys luxury bullshit, he collected cars and motorcycles, and he's sitting there saying, fuck this fucking $59.99 book.
Are you kidding me? Like 10 models for $65? Like, he wasn't having it. And it's like he made triple as I do. And he was just like, this price ain't worth it. And it just never reconciled with him. And like, he just couldn't get over and even after purchasing them price part over, he had no interest in playing the Tau. They're almost like a Gundam army. Like, it didn't really match who he was. I didn't really feel, I was like, they're good guys, but you have to look at it from the perspective that all of the factions think they're the good guys. They just aren't, because they're at war all the time. And it's like, maybe Chaos and stuff doesn't think they're good guys or Dark Elves, but most think that they're righteous in what they're doing. So you can just come up with your own reasons. Ultramarines are pretty much my favorite Superman good guys of the Warhammer world, and I really thought my dad might enjoy that. Having said that, I literally am building an Ultramarine army with the hopes that I can convince my dad to play the game once I have an army that might represent his beliefs. It's an army about honor and dignity and being, stout and stoic, and that's a lot who he is. And, I was like, honestly, I'm willing to, I want the army anyway, but I figured that would be the one that he would sit down and play the game with me. So, my dad's not a dick or anything, if it sounds like it. We're actually going fishing in like 2 days. We just have different interests. I've never played D&D with him. He loves that kind of stuff, and I've never. And I want to get into that with him. I pushed that, and he just won't get back into D&D either. Now he's taking a new job, so it's a little harder. But my point being that even my dad, who was making a lot of money at the time, had no interest in expending his extra money on this. He'd spend way more on guitars and cars and motorcycles, but had no interest in these little miniatures. So the price is bad. It's so expensive, and it's ridiculous that it would take 10 years to build a collection that's like, that's something you could be proud of, or something that a planned thing, like to build a terrain table that's fully loaded with, multiple armies to play on it. It does take time, like months, years. And it's not just a money thing. The richest guy in the world, the only power he could have is if he could buy professionally painted armies on eBay and just collected those. But even then, the first guy who hears that is going to say, oh, well, you didn't even paint them. Like, I put in all my, I blood, sweat, and tears with these, but, whatever. That's somebody else's great work, and I'm impressed by him, but you didn't do anything. You're just playing with them. So it's like, you could get over that. And it's like, if you were just buying boxes of miniatures, you could buy, 10 Leviathan boxes, but who the fuck is going to build it? If you're rich enough, I guess you're hiring somebody now, and it's like, no. The reality is the actual hobby's requirements of time is the next thing that's going to knock out it's going to knock out half of your people that were already knocked out by the price. So you had the price, which was already too much. It's expensive. In general, people are going to see it as expensive from the minute they see it. Now we're saying time. My final thing on the price, today I went to my favorite game store, and my son said, I want to get a miniature from the Infinity line. And if you don't know, Infinity is a small squad-based infantry game kind of thing, like a small team game, and it's very cool and high speed, but it's just as expensive as any other miniature game. He was disappointed to find out his $10 budget that he had saved up was nowhere near this price, and I actually had thought he wanted one of the cheaper Dungeons and Dragon models that come pre-primed that are like $4.99. I thought that's what he was there for, and he then explained to me, no, I want these Infinity ones. And I was like, well, I don't want to tell you this, but like, I'm not dropping $35 on that miniature. It's one metal miniature that I'm going to have to build for you, and it's just going to end up on your floor anyway, so no. Like, and it's like, here he was, like, I remember being a kid in the Warhammer store not being able to afford anything ever, and it felt horrible because I loved it so much and just couldn't afford anything. And here my son is in the same perspective, and I told him, you have this much spending money, you can get a small set for like $20. And so he actually went with a cyberpunk set of SWAT team members, which he thought was really cool. And I was like, cool, dude, he's got his own, he wants to get into his own miniature stuff. I don't care as long as he's into miniatures. I love that he's into miniatures. As a father, it just makes me so happy. So there's my success. I did successfully recruit my son. My son is totally into miniatures and has been since birth. The first time he saw my terrain table First time he saw painted miniatures, he was like, let me play with those as army men, let me play with that. And so he's been into it the whole time. He's not totally into the rolling dice yet, but we're getting to that point. So recruiting can go, how did I get my son into it? If you're wondering, how do you get your kids into it? He loved giant robots on his own. Like, as a 2-year-old, he kept saying, giant robots. Like, I love giant robots. You know, he just kept saying, giant robot, giant robot. He loved giant robot. So anytime there was a giant robot in a movie or a toy, we would, get him an Iron Giant and, Zurg from Buzz Lightyear. We would get him anything that was a giant robot. And he saw my giant robots for Warhammer and was like, that is what I mean. That is giant robot. And he was so sold once he saw that there were walkers and robots in Warhammer. And he likes Space Marines a whole bunch too. I mean, he picked out SWAT team members today, so he's not only into the robots, but he certainly was sold initially when he saw mega robots in battle. That did it for him. My dad loves superheroes, and frankly, Warhammer is filled with superhero-like characters, but no matter how I try to sell it to my dad, it just sounds like warfare to him, and he has no interest in, warfare in his time off. He was ex-military too, and just that's not fun for him. He'd rather be in a fantasy realm and Dungeons and Dragons, or be a superhero in like a game like Champions, which is a D&D superhero game. And it's like that's his interest, and I have to just accept he's not as into it. But my girlfriend was totally willing to get into this game, and that's been a really great thing. Is we've been coming up with how she's going to get into the game. She wasn't totally sold on the price, and it wasn't because she was trying to be cheap. She just couldn't afford it. It was that she was like, I just don't feel like I have, the $150 to get started. Like, I don't see me having that to just blow on plastic miniatures. So I made the deal with her that when we go to do this, I'll match whatever you pay. So if you pay $75, I'll pay $75, and then that'll be the $150, and then we'll both help pay for your first set. That's a really good way to get somebody into anything, is helping pay. I don't suggest that. This hobby is expensive enough. Don't do that. But in this situation, I'm willing to do it because, one, I'm going to end up using the miniatures for my own games and stuff too. And two, I want her to see it as like, what if one day for Christmas I got her a set of demons for her army, and she was like, oh my god, that's exactly what I need to beat you. Like, that's pretty fucking awesome and ideal. And maybe I'm like going a little too unicorny there, but it's like, that's what I'd really hope for, is like, I'd get her some girl stuff too that she'd actually want, but also I would hope that she could get to a point where it's exciting to get new miniatures from me, or something like, hey, I went to the game store and got you a new paintbrush, I want to share that. And she shows a total interest in it, and it's like, that's a great thing. So when you have people that you can share the things that you love, it makes it a lot easier to keep those relationships happy and healthy. It's an element of play that I plan on doing a whole series about having play in your relationships with friends, with your girlfriend, wife, and with your kids, playing with your kids, getting on the ground and playing toys with them. How important it is because how intimate it really is. It's how you learn a lot about people, is through play. Who's competitive, who's just and decent, and who has good ideas, who's imaginative. You can learn so much about people through the element of play. So that's probably going to be where I start right here. You're trying to recruit somebody into the hobby. They're on the border, the price is shitty, they may not have the time, but you sit them down, they play the game, and they like it. This is essential. If you are ever in the stage of recruiting somebody into Warhammer and trying to get them to play with you, please, for the love of God, make their first game fun. This is not up to the dice. Do not fucking massacre them. Don't bring out your best list and test it on this new guy. Do not do that. If you have one list that's amazing and one that's garbage, let him play the amazing one. Seriously, get your ass kicked. Take the L, take the loss, and let this guy get into the hobby because he feels the fun. Let him kill some orcs and feel the victory. What I used to hear was the Games Workshop mantra that we use too when demonstrating a game. I would use it. I think it's brilliant. was the Dawn of War trailer. If you remember that, it had Space Marines holding off a position, and then they get rushed by orcs, and then there's a clash, and the Space Marines win at all, just barely. And it was like, that's what you need to show them, is a cinematic battle where the Space Marines fight the monsters, hold them off, and charge into victory, and stick a sword in the orc war boss. You know, that's what you want to show them. You don't want to show them what a tragic loss looks like, and, you know, what not killing a single model looks like, or getting tabled looks like, or anything miserable. You want to show them the best elements of the game in kind of a controlled environment. This is the kind of thing where you can forget to charge them. You can forget to shoot your most powerful gun. It's okay. You're not cheating. You're helping the person enjoy the game so that they get an idea of the fun part of it. Like, they don't have to, you want them to get a good taste in their mouth. I have failed at this. I had a friend invest in a game called Dust Tactics. It was about World War II, walkers, and all kinds of futuristic tech in World War II. We sat down to play the game after setting up a beautiful terrain city. I was coming at him as the Americans, and I was testing my stuff just like he was testing his. The only difference was I had been playing war games my whole life since I was a kid. He had never played one once, so even though we were both new to it, I knew the basics of how a miniature game works. You measure, you shoot with the dice, and then you charge into battle. It's all pretty basic stuff. And like, so it turns out these jump pack troops I had were amazing, and I wiped the floor with him, and like 30 minutes into the game, he just like looked me in the eye and said, "Dude, I hate this." And I was like, "Really?" And he was like, "Yeah, I hate this game. I don't get it. I don't see how this would be fun to anybody." And I was like, "Is it just because you're getting your ass kicked? Because we can switch sides. Like, I will literally sit on the other side of the board." And he was like, "No, it's just like this miniature wargaming. I don't get it. It's just not fun to me." And I was like, "Okay. Like, I'm never going to try with you again. And it's not because you're a dick or anything. It's just straight up, you don't enjoy it. I will not push this hobby on anybody who I think would not enjoy it." That's why I think it's upsetting that my dad hasn't played the game, is I'm like, "You play D&D, for fuck's sake, you will probably like Warhammer. It's fun." And it's like, that's why I push it on. I was like, "You gotta play Warhammer with me." And what's funny is the second he sees this video, if he does, he'll feel like a jackass, and he'll be like, "I'm a dick, and I should have played with you a long time ago," and stuff. I'm like, it's not a big deal. Like, it's just literally, I have to me, it's a cool challenge to kind of find, my son was easy to get into it, but to get my dad into it, it's taken, like, I have to kind of figure out who he is and what he's about to get him into it. And it's like, oh, you know what? He's not going to have the time to build miniatures. He has his own hobbies. And that intrudes on the hobbies that he's working his whole life to get good at, just like I am. So if I do all the work for him and invite him to come over and, you know, smoke our wooden pipes and have a beer and play a game of Warhammer with the miniatures that I have, and I even tell him, you know, this game that we're going to play is I'm going to play weak monsters, and you're going to play the powerful Space Marines, and you can just see how long you can hold off against me. You know, that's basically how I'll pitch it. And it's like, I'm not worried about that at all. I've actually been talking to my dad already about playing Warhammer games. But that's something that I want everybody to know, is even somebody who's sold the game and has been into it for 20 years hasn't been able to convince immediate family members to even look into it. And it's like, I've had brother-in-laws and stuff that are no longer brother-in-laws that were just into all the same things as me, that just would not invest in such a game. And it happens more often than not. The person loves it, it's cool, this is dope, then you show them the price, then you show them the time investment, and they're just out. It's like you imagine if you shredded on a guitar and somebody was like, "That was amazing," and they asked, "How did you do that?" And you said, "I play guitar 3 hours a day, and I saved up my money for 3 years to buy this $3,000 guitar that sounds really great, and this amp, and this microphone, and this equipment. You know, I spent all this money on this." And they're like, "Oh, so I can't just tomorrow shred on that guitar." And you're like, "No, it's going to take like 5 years of commitment and hard work." Yeah, try selling the average person on that. Like, they have to really like that shredding on the guitar, and that's what I'm saying. They have to really like that game. That's what if you're showing them the game and they're playing it for the first time, You need to make that first game like you are shredding on a guitar like Jimi Hendrix to get somebody interested in playing. You want them to feel like it's worth it to put the money and time in because it was worth it for you. If they follow what you did and it worked out for you, it'll work out for them too. It won't be a dumb investment. That's what you're trying to show them is, hey, I invested in this thing. It worked out great for me. I have friends because of it. It strengthens my relationships. I'll probably be playing this game with my son when I'm 80. And it's like, that's really cool. I want that too. And it's like, great, then here's the steps to get there, and I will help you get there. I will help you paint your miniatures. I'll help you build them. I will help you play the game. I will help you win the game. I will help you do whatever you need to get into the game with me. I'm a friend, and I want you to join me. And that's how you have to come at it. It's like, most people, when they're joining a social hobby, they do want to eventually play with other people. That would usually be nice. And it's like, most people aren't going to want to play the game if you aren't actually fucking offering to play with them. So just start with that. Is if you buy into this game, I will play with you. It's a good deal. Like, it's a good deal. It's saying you're not just spending $60 on plastic miniatures. You're spending $60 and guaranteeing that when we have groups where we all 5 of us play Warhammer together, you get invited. You basically just paid your group fee, and now you get free miniatures. Like, it's like, see it that way. It's like, I just had this happen for me. I just got invited to a group of gamers that I played with all of them in high school. It was kind of the group of guys that I always liked but never had classes with because they were too smart. And they've all come back together for Warhammer, and that's the thing that we all still have in common. And there was like 5 dudes I haven't seen since I was 17 years old, 16 years old. And it was really great to play games with them. And really, like, all of us have felt the same way. No, like, we have guys who are getting back into it, and them seeing that, how much I enjoy it, how much money I've put into it over time, and how much better we've all gotten at painting by putting our time in. They've all been like, you know what? I want to buy an army. You bought 6. It must not be that bad of a thing. And it's like, exactly. And it's like, I've told people, I bought 43 armies. I invest in these things. I buy them, trade them, sell them. And I just happen to have come to a place where I love every army I build now. And I don't want to ever separate with any of them. I just adore them. So anyway, the cost is so high and the time investment is high. So our work as the gamers within our hobby, if we want to get our friends and family into this game, is hard. It's hard. You got to get past the first 2 hurdles, and then that doesn't even begin, like, interest, whether or not they have found something that speaks to them. Because 9 times out of 10, most people can find something in Warhammer that does speak to them, but there is those 1s and 10s where just nothing really works. That's going to be another video series. The other video I mentioned earlier, it's going to also cover this. Within your relationship, if you have a girlfriend or, I hate to put it this way just because it sounds like only males and female relationships. But basically, if you were trying to get a friend that's a girl, mom, sister, girlfriend, wife, anything of that effect, involved in the game, you will find that it's a lot harder because the options are just not there. You might have to really more lean because there's only one real female faction, so they might just not find as many things that they resonate with. And as a salesperson, it's like trying to sell a Hummer H2 to a 80-year-old woman. She's just not gonna show any fucking interest in this big bulky dumb man car. And it's like, that's kind of what you're selling as Warhammer, is this big, bulky man car, and there's a bunch of different versions of the big, bulky man car, and then there's like a Miata for the girls to drive. And it's like, is there anything other than a Miata? And it's like, no, you just get the Miata. And it's like, it's a little harder to sell on that. And it's like, I do see, it kind of sounds a little douchey, my speech, saying like recruiting and like selling people on this game. And it's like, the truth is Warhammer doesn't exactly sell itself the way it comes off as it would. Like, people find interest in it just by seeing it and love it, but their willingness to spend $60 or $100 or $400 to get started is fleeting. Like, that's just not that common. The people will say this is kick ass and then walk out of your store. That's pretty common. I'd say 90% of our customers looked at the Warhammer section for 2 seconds, thought it was cool, and moved on. That's it. Nobody's questioning if it's cool product. It is cool product. The only question is can you get people into it? And it's like, I understand why younger people who are seriously stressed on money, wouldn't get into it. I set a budget. My standard budget usually, if I'm gonna be honest, if I'm lucky, on a good month, if my pay is correct and everything goes right, I can put $200 into miniatures and stuff. And to me, that's obscene. That's a lot of money into bullshit. But that's my whole hobby budget for the whole month. It's like for video games, anything like that. My entertainment budget. I basically give myself $200 a month to splurge on bullshit and not question. And then if I need more money, I have to sell armies, action figures, old equipment, anything I've got. So that's how I do it. I buy, sell, trade to get the stuff that I want. And honestly, it does make it kind of shittier, the hobby, because for me, if I wanted to have more stuff for my collection, I do always have to sell to get more. Like right now, I'm in the process of selling my entire Star Wars Black Series collection because I ended up getting hit with a bunch of fees that I didn't expect, and out of nowhere, I've kind of got to sell my entire army collection, and I'm not even replacing it. It's just going towards bills. And so this has nothing to do with recruiting. But anyway, getting people into the game will always have the problem of money. It'll always have the problem of time. If they don't have the time or the money, leave them the hell alone. They might still show the interest. If you really wanted to get somebody into it and you're already in a group, invite somebody to your group. Holy crap, inclusion. Inclusion will get anybody into anything. You just show them up, they show up, you tell them, hey, we're painting miniatures. We've got an extra set of miniatures that came with this set. Why don't you start painting? And you're like, I don't really know how. And they're like, it doesn't matter. Just do your best. And they start painting and people start complimenting them. Somebody says, oh, you should check out this army. You should check out this. And okay, and you have them feel included. I have not been invited to a group of my friends who play a Games Workshop D&D game. I don't remember what it's called, but they've been playing for 10 years, and apparently I'm not invited because it would fuck up the game. And it's like, because they already have, they've been going for 10 years, and it's been the same players. And so I can't be added in, or it would like mess up the leveling system. I get it. But at the same time, I'm like, you know how easily you could get me into that kind of game system by just inviting me? I would learn the whole rule set. I would do whatever you need me to do. It's like, because once I'm included, I'm going to have the pressure of knowing what's going on and stuff like that. And it's like, I do think getting people into the hobby, it does feel like you're asking them to be rich and have unlimited time. I'm disabled. I work from home. And so I actually have a lot of time for hobbying. Sometimes I have, hours hours each day alone where I can just work on miniatures. Not everybody has that. So it can just be looking for the target audience for trying to get your friends into it is people who have a hard time making friends, people who are interested in science fiction, horror, or military history, or fantasy, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, that kind of stuff. And you want to know, like, if you want somebody to go from didn't have any interest in the game to suddenly does, you would have to figure out what they are into. So if they say, I've played D&D or I play Star Wars X-Wing, to get them into Warhammer, you would think, okay, this guy plays character-based games and starship games, so like the little he's into starship battles and characters. I might be able to sell him on that new Air Force based game that's for Warhammer. I don't know what it's called, but it's the one that's just all flight based. I haven't looked into it, but I would probably push him on that, not 40k. I would push him on a flight based game like X-Wing. I might say, have you tried this? Or did you know that in Warhammer 40k, the flight models are this big and they can actually carry models across the battlefield and like they're totally devastating. It's like bringing an X-Wing to a Legion game. And they'd be like, oh, that's really cool. It'd be really cool to bring close air support to a battle. And it's like, okay, well, you can do that. So, my main points. Selling Warhammer, you got to get past the first two humps. Price and time. Then you have to get past the next most important, which is interest. You have to show them an interest in it, or they have to already hold an interest in it. If you can get all three of those, you then need to do the fourth one, which would be inclusion. You need to invite this person to enjoy the hobby with you. They're not going to do it alone very often. It's depressing. I haven't met very many people that just jump into games like this on their own, other than myself and a couple others. But I always had the intention of playing the game with somebody eventually, and that kind of sold me on it. That's probably all I have to say about recruiting. Like trying to get people into the game. I'm studying for HR right now, and so I'm speaking in HR terms, and it's destroying my mind. So I'm speaking in recruiting terms, like as in like if I was recruiting for a company, what tactics would I use? I'm saying these are the tactics that you can use to try to get your friends to see what you see when you play Warhammer. When you look at that table and you see a fantastic battle going on with sound effects and blood and guts and the real shit, you want them to see the movie that's playing in your head that makes this cool, the same way that D&D players don't want to be judged by the dorks sitting around a table. They want to be judged by the cool story that's happening within the meta. And so getting your friends into it, not all of them will be into it. 90% of my friends are not that I have that many friends, but the ones that aren't even my best friends. I barely know them. I knew them from high school. They're not my military buddies. They're not my best friend that I've known since I was 8. They're not any of that. But they're good enough friends to enjoy a game with, laugh with, maybe crack open a Corona or something and enjoy a game. And it's like, that's fine. And it's like, I don't need to go hang out with my best friends or anything. It just felt good to be included. This group just recruited me. And I'll end it with that. I got recruited by this high school group because I fit all the stuff that they needed. They were picking dudes, it seemed like, from high school that they remembered played the game. One of them I've kept in contact with. I've played games with him throughout the years. So when he got everybody back together for 40K, he let me know, hey, we've got a group. Would you like to join us? They recruited me because they needed an extra guy to play games with. I don't even know if they recruited me because I'm that good of a guy. I think they straight up recruited me because I have Warhammer models and can play. And I'm like, sweet, yeah, I'll totally be included for those reasons. Because I need people to play with. If not, I'd go crazy in my attic playing alone. And it's so I'll finish off with that. So I got recruited into a group to start playing their games. I got recruited to play Age of Sigmar, and I jumped into it just because it was a chance to get out of the house and hang out with somebody, even though it cost me kind of a lot of money. It was worth it to hang out with somebody because I don't get out of the house much. So if that's your situation, sometimes Warhammer is totally worth it, and to other people it might be too. If you have a passion, selling that passion isn't evil. Speaking like, I fucking love Warhammer. I love these miniatures. I love getting to like face level with my terrain table and imagining that it's a movie and this is my set and I'm a director, and it just makes me happy. People like to see people passionate, and because you can't fake it. You can't fake loving something this much. And it's like, that's something that people really get drawn to. So showing your passion for this, don't be a jackass salesman and push on people, buy this. Like, no, maybe if your job requires it, you might have to, but if it's with your friends, it's one of those things where it's like, we would like you to be a part of our community because you're a good dude too, and we know that you would enjoy it with us. Like, we love playing this game. You might enjoy loving it as much as we do. And it's like, it's such a great hobby that you do kind of hope that your friends could give it a shot and see if they like it. And sometimes, like my one friend who said, nah, dude, I hate this. That happens. And then you have other friends, like my friend Council, that's his last name. His first time playing war games, he really got into it. Like, he started trying to professionally paint. He bought several armies. He was like spray painting in his barracks room, and it's like he just loved this war game stuff, and he had never done it as a kid. He just jumped into it as soon as the opportunity came. And some people are just looking for a group of friends who will play games with them. And that's what it's all about, having something to play having people to play games with. It's just a great feeling. play is something you think dies when you're a kid, but when you think about it, when you go play a sport, that's playing. When you play a video game, that's playing. When you like wrestle around with your girlfriend, I'm not talking sexual or anything, I'm saying like literally just wrestle around and tease each other and stuff, that's playful, it's play. And it's like that play part of life is the kind of the jovial fun part, the innocent part, the good part of life that should stay alive. And it's like my group of friends calls our group on Discord, we're called like dollies. And so like dolly, something about dollies. I don't remember what the actual term was, but it has the term dollies in it to admit that we're just playing with toys. Like in the end, we have to remember that we're just playing with army men, and we're just doing it the same way we did as kids, just as adults with rules to make ourselves feel better. And it's like, but we're just playing army men in the end. And it's like we remind ourselves with that by calling the group dollies. And I'm not totally fun with that, but I like the message. So now I will end the video. Hopefully you can get some of your friends to come play with you and enjoy your game with you. If you have the armies and you have the time, get these guys into it. Get to see if they just want to come play with one of your armies and just enjoy the game. I just want people enjoying the game. I don't care if more money is spent on it. I really don't. I just want more people enjoying miniature wargaming as much as I do. This was Bolt Gun Metal. Thanks for listening.